So, through all of my explorations and experimentations and reading every book known to man, because I was trying to figure this out, I came to this sort of framework that it's a simulator as opposed to a simulation. And the reason I say that is actually an important distinction is that
I had what can only be described as an OBE, an outer body experience.
I look at this reality as our soul or consciousness uses this physical avatar in this physical world the same way a pilot uses a flight simulator.
Yeah, like there is a real world, it's tangible. It's like getting rendered in front of us because of our own consciousness observing it, right? The moon is weird, right? What's going on with the
Yeah,
moon?
dude, the moon is nuts. The first guys went to the moon and they came back and they did a press conference. It's the creepiest thing you've ever seen. They were basically what they saw there was so crazy. And then they come back to Earth and instead of being able to tell humanity about it, they're literally told they can't say anything. Yeah, the moon's weird. Is that Edgar Casey talks a lot about the Atlantean Archive, this hall of records that's underneath the Sphinx. My kind of guess is that something's going to happen on March 20th, 2026, and that if it has to do with anything, it's going to have to do with revealing something underneath the Sphinx.
I had questions I was going to ask that had more topical to do with my channel, but I kind of just got lost in the funness of all the varying topics that you cover. But I had to. This one was for me, okay?
So the side games, reading minds, just straight up telepathy. For remote viewers like Ingo Swan, there was like Nordic beings, tall Nordic beings that were all these different extraterrestrials, and it was kind of like a spaceship, is the way he described it.
Jordan Crowder, thanks so much for joining me on the show. I've been a big fan of your work now for quite a while. I love your whole style when it comes to consciousness and different meditative practices to like hone your awareness and all these things. Um, but if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief summary of who you are and what it is you do for the people that aren't aware of your work.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on Erologos. And yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing and what this channel is all about. You're going to help a whole lot of people, and I'm very happy to be here. So, my journey is normal in a lot of ways. That's why people resonate with it because like it's not particularly special or anything. Normal life, two kids, house in the suburbs, corporate job, all that fun stuff. But like underneath the surface, I was always plagued by addiction. And that caught up with me, basically in a big way. When my mom died, I didn't handle it very well at all. I basically did everything wrong that you could do wrong, right?
Yeah.
Looking back now, and I drove myself down this deep, deep hole, and I hit rock bottom, and I basically died, and somehow miraculously survived, and that led to this like spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call this thing that I'm going through, where basically I went through the whole initiation process and the dark night of the soul, and then basically just had this kind of spiritual awakening, for lack of better words, and went on this journey. I mean, we can double click on any of that later, but we had some very mystical things happen through the process. Some kind of I don't know, paranormal, extraterrestrial things happen through the process. We had a whole lot of interventional type things happen through the process that basically let us understand that we're not alone and that there's a lot more to this world than we realize, and that just set me on this kind of mission to try to figure out reality, what my place in it is, and see if I can help others get through these same kind of tough, struggles because, it's like you don't want to go through all that and then not have anything good to show for it. So I was like, okay, if I can help other people, then it would make all of this worth it. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. It's interesting because like so many like a long string of synchronistic events pretty much happened to me to lead me to be talking to you today, And
Mhm.
you mentioned that you died, so you had a near-death experience.
Hmm.
I heard, yeah. Well, like I haven't had one of those, but I had what can only be described as an OBE, an body experience, and years ago I was big into Carl Jung. Basically, I had a lot of shadow work to work on, basically, and that kind of led me to find God, so to speak. But it was through a very Christian framework because of Jung. Jung was very
Hmm.
to do with Christianity, and yeah. But then one day I had an OBE, and it was really, really powerful, and that just kind of threw me through a loop because I kind of began to get into Christianity, and then it that just completely reshaped my view on spirituality. And then so I was looking for answers online, and must have watched, I don't know, over 100 testimonies of near-death experiences, and I was just like, what the hell? Why isn't everybody talking about this? It's like these fundamental universal themes that keep popping up.
Yeah.
And there's obviously, so that led to a dark night of the soul, so to speak, of not really knowing where to place your faith. I thought I had a God, but now it's like I don't know. So but then I got interested in a lot of kind of Nietzschean vitality health pro stuff for a while, and what else? That fell into I loved Jason Razorjani's work basically, and I saw him
Mhm.
one day online on Twitter. He normally has a lot to, he's shitting on people a lot online, and I saw him. He had a lot good things to say about you, so I checked you out, and ever since I've been hooked. So it's like, what is that, like 6 months ago or something like that, or 7 months ago you went on with him, maybe
Um,
longer.
no, I don't know. Maybe about 6 months. Yeah. I think it was in October. So maybe 5 months. Yeah. It's been a while. Time goes fast right now. Yeah. That's funny that you found me through him. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's been a wild ride. I'm just hooked on your content. So you talk a lot about simulator theory, I think, as opposed to
mhm.
simulation theory. Would you mind just going into that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So like you, like I don't even know if I can classify what happened to me as a near-death experience because it was more of an out-of-body experience that just coincided with me almost dying. Because I didn't do the traditional crossover to the spirit world. I stayed here in this physical reality. I was out of my body. And but I was out of my body, my consciousness was out of my body, watching my body die. But I felt like I was like tethered by this like very thin cord at the time, and that my consciousness was essentially in this limbo state of, still focused on this physical body and this physical life because I was still alive, but it was also like at any minute that body could die, and then poof, that cord is cut and I'm out of here. So I kind of felt like I was in the in between phase watching, and it was a really weird feeling, obviously. And then whenever my body stabilized and they admitted me and everything, then at a certain point I came back into this body, and it felt like that out of body experience felt like like when I came back into my body, it felt like my body was like a VR headset for my soul, right? Like it was like, whoop, okay, I'm back in. Now I'm first person point of view. And that whole experience made me realize a couple things. That you're more than your physical body. Obviously, your consciousness is independent than your physical body, but you do work together. You're harmonized. But you're separate, two separate things. And your consciousness has to be more fundamental than the body because when you're out of it, you still have awareness, you have your memories, you have your personality, you have all that stuff. Um, so that led me down this path to try to figure out like what the hell happened? Like how do I explain this? How do I make sense of this? Because I was a very materialist person before that.
Mhm.
I didn't think there was a soul or a spirit or a consciousness. I just thought you have a body. The body generates all those things. When the body dies, so do those things.
Yep.
It was a pretty simple way of thinking. And this changed all that because I was like, okay, well, obviously there's more to the story. So I actually, I'll skip over a lot of stuff, but I went to the Monroe Institute at a certain point and I trained there and learned how to hone these abilities and how to, leave your body and astral project. And I learned remote viewing and time travel and, you know, was lucid dreaming and all these things, right? It was just incredible. And I learned how to do all these things and hone these things. And once you do that, you really understand, okay, now I got a better grasp on this reality and how the reality works. And the best way I could describe it, because I went through the whole dark night of the soul and I went through like simulation hypothesis and all that stuff. Actually, Tom Campbell helped me make sense of a lot of things, but he even is a little more simulation theorist than I like to be. Um, so through all of my explorations and experimentations and reading every book known to man, because I was trying to figure this out, I came to this sort of framework that is a simulator as opposed to a simulation. And the reason I say that is actually an important distinction is that I look at this reality as our soul or consciousness uses this physical avatar in this physical world the same way a pilot uses a flight simulator. So a pilot uses a flight simulator to train and become a better pilot. You do things in the simulator you can't or wouldn't do outside of the simulator so that you can test yourself and train and put yourself in these precarious situations and you level up on the other side. Well, our consciousness, which is non-physical, comes into this physical avatar to have these physical experiences, so it can do things that it can't do in the non-physical world, like fall in love, like have heartbreak, like overcome adversities, like deal with health struggles, and all these kinds of things that really test us and build our character. So we come here to do all that. It's not a prison planet. It's not torture device. It's not, a soul trap. We voluntarily come here, the same way a pilot voluntarily goes into a flight simulator. But it seems very real. We get the memory wipe. It's very immersive. We can become addicted to it. We can get stuck in the reincarnation loop, but that's still us doing it. We're not forced here. But I kind of use that framework to explain how you can be a non-physical consciousness and a physical avatar. You're a higher self and a human self, two things in one. It's kind of like when you're playing a video game, you are the character inside the game, but you're also the person outside the game playing the game. You're both of the things. And that was kind of the best metaphor I could use to explain what I had found through all my research and experimentation. And so I just kind of put that together and called it simulator theory as opposed to simulation because it's partially a simulation, but it's not. You know what I mean? There's a lot of distinctions. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my simulator theory.
Yeah, like there is a real world. It's tangible, and
Yeah.
it's like getting rendered in front of us because of our own consciousness observing it, right? Like the double split experiment and so on. Was it that one? Do I have that one
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the human body as like a headset, like a VR headset for a soul, you can break it down this way. You're real. Ben is real. Ben is in, you're in Ireland, right?
That's right, sir.
All right. So Ben is a real human in Ireland. You exist. Some people would say that no, this is all virtual and all that kind of stuff. No, I think that you're real, you really exist. That's important for people to understand. But the part that's not real is, we've proven this through modern sciences, especially neuroscience, that you never fully interact with reality. There's always this interface, right? So there is an objective reality out there, but we don't see it as it actually is. It would actually be overwhelming. There's too much data to take in. We know that we only hear a tiny sliver of the sound waves available. We only see a tiny sliver of the light waves available. We have very limited senses. So the reality that is real, we see a tiny sliver of that reality, and then we actually create this mental movie in our minds. And the mental movie in our mind that's created by the data that comes in, this tiny sliver of data that comes in, that's what creates our reality. So our reality is an augmented version of the actual reality. So there is a real reality, but each person has their own like augmented version. So we're in a simulation, but the simulation's in our head. But the simulation in our head is based off of an actual objective reality. So I know it gets a little mind bendy, but that's the way it seems to actually work.
Yeah, yeah. And like it, of course, like it coincides with so much of ancient religions. Like they all say the kind of the same type of thing, but just in different ways, different flavors of saying
Mhm.
the same thing, the same theme. Yeah. Um, it's fascinating. I've heard this word predictive programming being thrown around a lot since
Hmm.
the p pandemic, funny enough. Um, What's your thoughts on predictive programming? Because I have a hard time believing that it's just like maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I have a hard time believe that it's a group of people in a room like inserting ideas into culture that's that's gonna affect us all. I have like an idea that maybe it's more like the collective unconsciousness, collective manifestation. Like the way on an individual level we're manifesting things whether we know it or not. If we're unconsciously manifesting more than likely negative situations, maybe the collective unconscious is manifesting these probable future outcomes, and that's how we're seeing them like pop up in movies and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I love Carl Jung too, and he talks a lot about the collective unconscious and they've been talking about this kind of stuff for hundreds, probably thousands of years, like tulpas and egregores and these kinds of thought forms, these ideas that your conscious thoughts and your subconscious thoughts and your unconscious thoughts can create these thought forms, these almost like at a certain point, if you reinforce it enough, it becomes its own sentient, like almost like living being.
Yeah.
And people have proposed that maybe that's what demons and some of these evil entities actually are, or just these kind of non-physical thought forms that we have just reinforced over time to such a degree that they're actually real. They become autonomous. And I do, I mean, there is definitely a place for that. Like even in my simulator theory, like that is absolutely possible. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. I think people do, your mind is powerful. It's very, very powerful. And we can, like that's what like everything I learned at the Monroe Institute and everything I learned since is that your thoughts do affect physical matter reality. They do. So if you have a lot of people thinking the same thing, well, that's just even more focused intention and even more, you're just adding more power to this egregore. Um, so a lot of it is just unconscious thoughts. Now, where it gets, I guess, next level is if you want to think about, okay, are our unconscious thoughts being shaped somehow in some way? Like knowing that our unconscious thoughts are what actually create most of our reality. Only something like a few percent of your actual reality is shaped by your conscious thoughts. If you think about it, you're subconsciously doing almost everything. Like you're not having to tell yourself to breathe. You're not having to tell yourself to swallow. When you walk up steps, you don't have to tell your legs how to bend and move and flex and activate certain muscles. Your subconscious does everything. But your subconscious does more than just activate your physical body. It shapes and molds your thoughts. It decides what data makes it through all the filters in your brain and projects your reality. It does all sorts of stuff. So your subconscious is creating your reality and is also very impressionable. It just is. I mean, we deal a lot in this house. We do a lot of hypnotic regression and stuff like that. And my wife is a hypnotist, and we learn all about how the subconscious is extremely malleable and impressionable. So if we know that and we're just regular schmoes, I mean, imagine what like, elite level people
Yeah.
and governments and militaries that have like very intelligent psychologists and people that understand human behavior, they
Mm.
of course know all this stuff. I'm in marketing. I have a marketing company. I know all about, like I've read so many of the great marketing books, and the great marketing books have nothing to do with running ads or branding or anything like that. It's all psychology. It's all if you understand how people operate, you can sell them stuff. That's how true marketing works. Now it's all algorithmic, but back in the day it was just understanding human psychology.
Mm.
And when you understand human psychology, you can manipulate it. You can do stuff, like I don't do any of that stuff, but like I'm not running countries or militaries or intelligence agencies. So, I used to think that, okay, I watch these people operate at these high levels and I was like, either they're so wicked smart that they're doing all this stuff and they're doing it so smoothly that we don't know, and that's terrifying, or they're not, which makes them stupid, which is even more terrifying because these people are running the world, you know?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, well, if me and my marketing friends know how to manipulate people's behavior, then I'm
Yeah.
sure the governments do. So either they're doing it, which is scary, or they're not doing it, which is kind of scary too. Um, so to answer your question more directly, is there like actually like groups of people out there that are purposely manipulating us through media and news and all this kind of stuff? The sad answer is yeah, 100%. There's these powerful think tanks and these powerful groups of people that are embedded in all the major societies and always have been that make, the decisions that shape the philosophy of civilizations and the philosophy of governments and large systems. And those philosophies trickle down into, the media, into the advertising campaigns, into, the slogans and everything that they put out. And they are shaping your subconscious. They're shaping everyone's subconscious at the same time. They've always done this, and it's not even really a secret thing. They just call them think tanks. But these think tanks, some of them are extremely powerful and influential. And what they say goes. And depending on the kind of ethics and morals of those people, and usually it's a small group of people, you're talking 20 people or so that could be making the decisions that could influence millions, if not billions. I mean, look how COVID worked out. Like all those decisions, that branding, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, all that stuff, that came from internal think tanks of probably 10 to 20 people. So.
Yeah. Yeah. When you put it like that, it's glaringly obvious. Yeah. So you knew about you obviously knew a lot about this type of ways of thinking before you went to the Monroe Institute, right? Because studying marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just a part of, you know, I've been very interested in human psychology for a long time. It's interesting, but because humans are way more machine-like than they want to think, because we're organic and we're sentient, but we're also very mechanical
Yeah.
and very predictable. And, you know, we shape ourselves. Our life shapes ourselves, our culture shapes us. We're individual, obviously, everyone's individual, but we're still a part of a collective. And so it's very interesting I'm very interested in cultures and religions and different time periods and stuff, and to see how humans change over time and change depending on where you're born in the world and what family you're raised in and what class you're in and all these things will shape you. And you can break out of that shaping. So my part, the thing I'm always been most fascinated in is how do you reshape yourself? How do you break out of these molds? So that's the part is like if you're born rich, you stay rich. If you're born poor, you stay poor. But then every once in a while, there's someone who's born poor and becomes rich, or there's some, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, those outliers, that's what I always focus on. I'm like, okay, how did that person do it? Like, what did they do different than this guy over here?
Yeah, the change of mindset has mindset first and foremost. Yeah, like I grew up I loved I don't know if you know the mentalist Darren Brown from England.
No.
Um Kind of like Oz Perlman type of stuff, but like he was doing it well, I think Oz Perlman's doing it a while. But anyway, I was reading his books growing up as a teenager, and he was always one to kind of like deconstruct a lot of like the magic in the world and say, there's underlying tricks, running through everything. So that kind of made
Mm,
me very skeptical of, but it made me mad interested in seeing how, like you said, kind of mechanical the human brain is and how influential it can be. So just through subliminal messaging and stuff like that. But but yeah, but on the other hand, I was very much so one to think kind of like I remember seeing Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about, people who believe in conspiracies and like, do you know how hard it is to keep a secret? That type of mindset. And like, I kind of bought into it
hmm
for a little while, just, long enough to keep me in the dark. But I think the pandemic really blew that open for me. Um, so yeah, it's fascinating to think that like you can buy into that way of thinking to say that there aren't really small groups of people keeping massive secrets. But of course, with the release of the Epstein files and all that now, that's just blowing everything out of the water, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell someone they're a crazy conspiracy theorist anymore. It doesn't mean obviously every conspiracy theory is true or anything, but I mean, I know Neil deGrasse Tyson and his thoughts and everything, and I used to think that way too because I was like, okay, these people aren't savvy enough to keep these crazy secrets. I mean, some of these secrets people are talking about, okay, did we or did we not land on the moon? These kinds of things. Like, okay,
Mhm.
you want to tell me these people have kept that secret for 60, 70 years. And then you start to realize that just take any of those conspiracies and you'd be like, oh, well, they haven't kept it secret because there's information everywhere. There's so much ammo to fuel any conspiracy. You know what I mean? Which means that, oh, it's not that they've kept it secret. What they've done is an amazing PR campaign to basically discredit anyone who brings these things up. So say somebody is like, oh, I don't think we landed on the moon, right? Even though there is plenty of evidence that supports both, that we did land on the moon and that we didn't. Personally, I think we did once and then we didn't go back and we had to fake the rest of it because we had already earmarked all the money. But we just let's just say somebody said we didn't land on the moon. Well, instead of like refuting it with facts, what they do is they just discredit the person's credibility. They say you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. So that was like a term the CIA came up with during the JFK assassination, and it was a PR term. It was something that they used back then. If you were saying that basically Lee Harvey didn't do it, right? You were called a conspiracy theorist. So that term was created by the CIA to basically discredit the people that were fighting their kind of official agenda. And now we know, looking back, any rational person knows that, okay, there's more to that story than they told us. So I'm not saying I know who did it or did not do it, but I know that the official narrative falls apart real fast when you actually dig into it.
Mhm.
So all those people that were coming out and just rationally saying, "Oh, I don't think that's the official or the whole story," they're just immediately called conspiracy theorists, and then the world moves on. So it's just a PR tactic to just discredit those people. It doesn't mean they don't have a point. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means you can immediately discredit them, and then everyone just moves on. And but that person's in there going, "But I have photos and I have testimonies and I have data," and they're like, "Nope, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. You're a kook." And you know what I mean? So it's wild. So that's this tactic they've used for a very long time, and it's been extremely successful. And now all of a sudden, with the internet and with this overwhelming evidence people have, that whole thing's fallen apart. And you can't any longer just blanket statement that. You have to now support it with facts, and that's a lot harder to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating because there's such a mass awakening kind of happen in all different areas of life now across the world because of the internet and that.
hmm
But can we just double click on the moon there? This is, as I've heard before, the moon is weird, right? What's going on with the moon?
Yeah.
What's going on with the moon? We got Elon Musk redirecting his efforts from Mars to the moon. That's a big one. And
hmm
we got NASA that just had a mission to go there and they postponed till March, I think, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like all sorts of theories on the moon. Giorgiani thinks it's some type of soul processor that redirects souls from ascending souls that getting caught in the loop of samsara. And is it William Tompkins believes in the
Yeah.
reptilians? They believe in the
Yeah.
moon. What's your thoughts on the moon?
Um, Dude, the moon is nuts. So, there's no reason it should exist the way it exists, just physically. So if you want to even take all the mystical things and alien things and all that out of it, it
Mm,
doesn't make any sense. There's no rational theory for it. There's three main theories for how the moon even exists and was created, and none of them make any sense. They all fall apart as soon as they have any sort of rigorous look at them. So it's too big, it's too close. It's tidally locked, which means that we always see the exact same side of it. We can never see the other side of it. None of the stuff makes any sense at all. It's something like 400 400 times smaller than the sun and 400 times closer to Earth than it is to the sun. It's the measurements of it are so precise and exact that we have these eclipses
yeah.
where, these lunar eclipses, which we have one coming up on Tuesday, and it's a big deal. And these eclipses are a big deal. I mean, ancient societies kind of, I don't know, they centered a lot of their thinking and their rituals and their ceremonies around these eclipses. But
Mhm.
there's no reason that the moon would have landed there naturally, got become tidally locked, would be that big. It's one-fourth the size of the Earth, and it's so close to us that our gravitational pull should have sucked it in a long time ago. And that it exactly is the exact size and distance from the sun to perfectly block it out at these eclipse times. And the odds of that ever happening are so astronomically low, it's impossible. I mean, it literally is an impossibility mathematically. So the moon shouldn't exist, and there's no explanation for it. So if you look at it that way, you're like, okay, right off the bat, it's weird. Okay, it's this huge anomaly that we look at every night. It controls our tides, it controls women's menstrual cycles, it controls our moods. Like statistics show that like ER visits go up during full moons and all this stuff. So
Mm,
so here's this thing. I mean, even the word lunatic literally is a meaning that lunar, the moon, when there's a full moon, you go crazy. Stories of werewolves and all this stuff. So this thing is very powerful and influential. And people just want to discredit it and say, no, it's just a rock. It's like, okay, we know it's more than that. Now, how much more is it? I don't know. There's been like very influential remote viewers like Ingo Swann who remote viewed it and said when he blindly remote viewed it, he was tasked by, we think the CIA, but they never officially disclosed who they were. But when he remote viewed the moon blindly, he found out later it was the moon. He said that it was like a slave trade. Like there was like Nordic beings, tall Nordic beings that were running like these slave compounds, and they're essentially and that there was all these different extraterrestrial beings, and it was kind of like a spaceship, is the way he described it. And then you have NASA who literally did this test on it where they put a seismometer on the surface and they dropped something or they landed one of their things and it made the moon ring like a bell, they said. And it rang like a bell for like 2 or 3 hours. So it just kept ringing, which is what hollow things do. And then you have all the craters on the moon that no matter how big the crater is, which if you have a crater that's 10 miles wide, that means that something gigantic, at least 10 miles, hit it. And no matter how wide the craters are, they don't go any deeper than like a certain depth. They're very, very shallow. If you look at the moon, it has all these craters all over it, thousands of them, and they're all very, very shallow, which suggests that there's a very hard shell underneath a soft surface, and then inside of that is hollow. That's a spaceship, or some sort of a space station. So you look at all that and you're like, okay, I don't know for sure, but it's weird. There's been other people that have come out and said, like, Chris Bledsoe and other people like that, Tim Taylor from NASA, that there's ancient relics on the far side of the moon from some ancient society. You have all this stuff like the movie The Truman Show, like they're stationed in the moon, watching down on Earth. So you have David Icke saying it, you have Jason Trajani saying it, you have all these, smart people saying the same thing, that the moon is not natural. It's some sort of a monitoring type station. Now, whether it's like what Trajani says, where it's literally a soul collector, I guess, like it sort of redirects the soul information from, so instead of naturally ascending and going in the reincarnation loop, it's kind of like a, I don't know, like a soul catcher kind of a deal. It redirects the soul information in there. I don't know about that. You know, possibly, but he tends to take things to the darkest extreme. But hey, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But anyways, the whole point is the moon seems weird. When you look at people like William Tompkins, who helped create uh, the entire Apollo system and all the rockets and everything, he helped design the entire Apollo program. He says that we went to the moon one time, that Buzz Armstrong and all those folks were greeted by reptilians, that on one of the major craters there was all these ships around it, and they were standing underneath their ships. The ships were floating and they were standing underneath their ships, and they greeted the astronauts and basically told them, don't come back. And that's why we have evidence of going, real pictures, moon rocks, that kind of stuff, but then we have a lot of fake stuff too. Like that's why both of those conspiracies seem to be proven true, because you can find obvious evidence that we faked some stuff and that they photoshopped and edited some photos and videos, obviously. And then there's real evidence and real testimonies. And then when you actually look at the first guys that went to the moon and they came back and they did a press conference,
Oh yeah.
it's the creepiest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's
They're like shell
bizarre.
shocked.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, bizarre, bizarre. And
Yeah,
then
so bizarre.
their lives kind of derailed after that, right?
They all turned into like severe alcoholics, and like most of them like left their like got divorced and basically destroyed their lives. They looked completely just mind messed up. I mean, they were just they looked crazy. They were saying things that didn't make any sense, like there weren't any stars. They didn't have any emotion. They weren't happy. They weren't excited. It was the strangest thing you've ever seen in your life. So either they were like MK Ultra into thinking they even went to the moon, and it was all just some sort of hypnotic regression or something, or they were basically what they saw there was so crazy, and then they come back to Earth, and instead of being able to tell humanity about it, they're literally told they can't say anything, and that's enough to make you look and act like that too. So, um, yeah, the moon's weird.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, like, with all of Elon Musk's like knowledge, like, surely he has looked into this stuff, and like, I got to think that like his efforts to go to Mars, like, maybe it was always in the plan for last minute make the switch to go to the moon because, like, in order to get everyone on board, like, fully, aim for the big thing, and then, the moon mightn't be like, oh yeah, we'll do that too. So I don't know. What do you like? He can't not know about these things, right?
Yeah,
He plays it very slick a lot of the time in the on this public PR stuff.
yeah, he's an interesting guy because yeah, I mean, he downplays all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
he's like, there's no aliens, there's none of this, none of that exists, da da da, and it's like you have to be. He's either I mean, there's only two options. Either he's very ignorant to any of those possibilities and any of those things, very closed-minded and ignorant to all the things that even like NASA's released so many things that basically suggest that we're not alone. And Elon's just like, nope, there are no aliens, there are no interdimensionals, there's nothing out there. If there was, we would have seen it. So that's his official stance. So either he's truly that ignorant or he is just playing a character, and his character is supposed to say those things and do those things, and he's just really good at it. He plays dumb really well. Because I watch him talk all the time, and I'm like, nothing about the way he talks convinces me that he's this like elite level intellect. But he seems to be. Like, so I think he puts on a more of a public persona, and he kind of dumbs things down a little bit for whatever reason. Like he's playing a character. And then behind the scenes, he's like wicked smart, like doing all these crazy things. So I like your idea of like a little bait and switch. Maybe the plan was always to go to the moon first, but he's like, okay, if we, excuse me, if we aim for Mars, then obviously the moon's gonna be a lot easier. It's like if you're, like playing baseball and you put a like donut on the baseball bat when you're warming up, right? It makes your bat heavier, right? So you're swinging with this weight on it, and when you take it off, you can swing a lot harder. It's kind of like that. It's like if you're getting geared up to go to the moon, then all of a sudden you change course. All of your designers and your engineers and your scientists and physicists and all those people, like all of a sudden they're working around the clock trying to figure out all these, you know, like formulas and break all these like basically like break down all these barriers and everything and get humans to Mars. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, we're going to the moon first. You got to think those people are like, oh, that's a piece of freaking cake, right?
Yeah.
It should be
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have to think, okay, all that stuff that we just talked about, like William Tompkins he created the first, like he helped design the Apollo mission. And before Apollo, it was called something else. I forget the name. It'll come to me. But part of that mission was you had the rockets to get you there, but you also had these big trucks, and the trucks turned into boring machines. And a big part of the original Apollo mission was to have these boring machines that they were going to be able to take. That's why they needed these gigantic boosters. And they were going to be able to take these boring machines there and dig all these tunnels and stuff underground because they wanted the moon to be this forward operating base so that we could eventually use it to go to other, planets and stuff. And that was the big mission for Apollo. It was never just to go and get rocks and come back. So what's interesting is we didn't have the boring technology back then. They had some of it, but it wasn't very good. And now one of Elon's companies is the Boring Company, right? And if you don't know what the Boring Company is they make these gigantic boring machines that just basically it's like a mole. It digs holes in the earth,
Wow.
and they're
Yeah.
amazing.
I have heard of this a couple of years ago. That's what he was doing, but I never made the link between now that he's interested in the moon and now this boring company.
Yeah. And they're the same size and shape as rockets, so you can fit them inside of a payload of a rocket. And they're fully autonomous. They're freaking nuts. They have these boring machines that literally just eat down into the earth. And the biggest problem with boring machines is usually the material that it's chewing up has to spit it out. So you typically have to have this like big tube kind of thing coming out of the back, and then you have to do something with all the material as it's like digging miles down in the earth. This thing like I don't know exactly how it works, but it takes care of all that. So it's like an all-in-one system that can dig into the earth and it builds these perfect tunnels. And then it somehow makes it to where all that stuff doesn't just collapse back into it. So it can autonomously just dig these crazy tunnels underground. And the tunnels are so perfectly built. And then they even have these machines that lay these like tiles as it's boring it. It's like laying the tiles behind it. So it's building these tunnels as it goes. And it's freaking nuts. But we didn't have that back in the 60s. So now all of a sudden we do. And the same guy who's building the rockets, the same guy who's building the solar panels and all that stuff that you would need for a civilization up there, the same guy who's building the robots that you would need to do all the work and building the electric vehicles that you would need to move all around is also building the boring machines that are going to make all the tunnels and everything. So now all of a sudden we're going back to the moon, you know?
And the
And
same
it's like,
guy who is prophesized to be the man Elon going to Mars. Did you hear about that? And I forget what
yeah,
book from like 100 years ago, apparently.
Wernher von Braun.
Oh, was
Yeah.
it? Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I have it in the living room. So Wernher von Braun, who is the one of the smartest people in the world, the head rocket scientist
yeah.
for Germany, came over here in Operation Paperclip and basically created NASA. I mean, he was the man that they built NASA around. And he created, the V2 rocket and everything. And he's the one who got us to the moon, the architect behind all that. He worked with um, just forgot his name, the guy we were talking about earlier. Anyways, yeah, he
Nice.
wrote a book called, I was reading it last night. It's so funny we're talking about this. But yeah, so Elon was the name of the group of people that was going to establish the colony on Mars.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay. His group of
yeah.
people. Right.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, once they get to Mars, they think that it's a barren place and we're going to go establish a human colony there. And there's already civilizations on Mars. And guess where the civilizations on Mars live? Underground. So they're 100% underground.
Wow.
So it's really, and they're like human civilizations. They're not like weird little alien people. They're like
That's
tall humans.
that's the thing, right? That's the new concept in the ufology is kind of going away from the green alien idea and more
Mhm.
like, are these humans?
They're
Future.
they're they're human like it's like there's a big family of humans and like we're
Mm.
we're somewhere in that family tree, but there's all sorts of other humans, you know.
Yeah. So we got Nordics, Greys, and Reptilians. They're like the three main ones that kind of pop up a lot. Um, Greys are what the like bio like the robots that
Little
so
helpers.
helpers
Yeah.
that they work for like the Nordics, and then there's like two factions of Nordics. Is that correct? Is that like they're the good guys and the bad guys, apparently, in the lore of all of this, of
In the
course.
lore, yeah. If you look at like, the Greek, Titans and the Olympians, and you had, in the Sumerian tales, you had Enlil and Enki, and
Yeah.
you always have these two factions that kind of fight over humanity, even, Prometheus and Zeus, and I mean the stories go on and on of these like two kind of disagreeing, powerful um, forces, but they're humans. Like Enlil and Enki, like the Anunnaki, were humans. Like these weren't aliens. Like they had beards, they were tall, they wore clothes. You know what I mean? Like they're humans. The Greek gods and Olympians and Titans, they were humans. They were always described and personified and shown as humans, just a different kind of human. Even in Egypt, when they talked about like the gods that lived amongst the men were humans. So it's like there's just these advanced humans, these advanced beings. So like the Nordics that we see flying around and everything that we call aliens, it's like I don't think they're aliens. I think they're just humans. They're just advanced humans.
Yeah.
But we like to think that we're the top, we're the apex. So we're like if there's anything more advanced than us, then it has to be an alien, right? It's like,
Mhm.
well, not necessarily. Earth's been around for billions of years. I mean, why would we be the only like human lineage,
Yeah, yeah. I was very atheistic and materialist growing up, and like I said, I was a big fan of Carl Jung. That's what kind of broke me out of that paradigm. But even he thought like his thoughts on UFOs were a little bit gaslighty because he was like he thought that it was like an unconscious projection of like collective
hmm
anxiety and fear and or the desire for salvation in times of global turmoil. But like it just gets to a stage where it's too common throughout the ages, the stories, the same themes popping up, and then just all the evidence around it, like it's all the testimonies, and you just like, damn, that's a strong projection. That's a strong, you know, yeah, I can't buy into that.
Well, I mean, I think the problem that a lot of people have is they try to put one label on the whole phenomenon, right? So, like, it doesn't mean Carl Jung was wrong. I'm sure a part of the phenomenon is our collective unconscious, but that's not the entire thing. So, to just say aliens are blank, that's where we get it wrong because it's a huge cosmos and we don't even know we're not even taking into account the fact that 99% of the cosmos is non-physical, so we have all these intervening non-physical dimensions that have intelligences and consciousnesses and archetypes in them, and then we have these mathematical realms like the Platonic realm of forms and things like that have intelligences in them. We have artificial intelligences, we have spiritual intelligences, and we have physical beings and physical planets. So when people say aliens are blank, it's like they're missing the point. It's like going out into the forest, seeing one, woodland creature and just saying that's what animals look like. It's like, well, maybe that's what that animal looks like, but there's bears, there's deer, there's coyote, there's birds, there's chipmunks, you know what I mean? There's everything. So it's like we just latch onto one. We say, okay, aliens are this, and then we just sort of try to broadly, paint a picture of that. And it's like, I think it's all of it. There probably are physical beings on other physical planets in the universe. Like it would be crazy if there wasn't, right? It's a huge place. It goes back billions, if not trillions of years. And
That's
there's probably interdimensionals, and there's probably spiritual, and there's probably thought forms and projections. There's probably all of it.
very true, very true. Multiple things can be true at once. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's these ideas are just getting so much more popularized though in the zeitgeist now. Even more people are understanding the terms of the different factions of these entities and aliens that we're putting on it. Like Steven Spielberg has a new movie coming out, right? With the I'm not forget what it's
hmm
called. I just saw the trailer to it.
Disclosure Day.
Is that what it's called? Disclosure Day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the idea of like being possessed or inhabited by the spirit of a other being. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I think like movies like that, like going back to like predictive programming, is this one of these things? Does he know more than he's letting on, or is this a thing that the collective consciousness is just kind of like slowly edging towards?
Was it predict in that case, would it be predictive programming or is it just sort of dropping some breadcrumbs? You know what I mean? It's like are they trying to get people comfortable with certain things because they think that there might be some big revelation coming out? They don't want it to be this like ontological shock and melt people's minds, so they start to to release some of these things, get people comfortable with concepts,
Mhm.
because that's not necessarily predictive programming, because they're not trying to necessarily, it's not like it done in a deceitful way, like they're trying to trick us or lie to us. It's more so getting people acclimated to certain concepts and ideas. Or is it predictive programming, which is literally just trying to reframe something and guide people to one certain way of thinking, done in like more of a manipulative way. So I don't know, because when it comes to people like Spielberg, he's done so many different types of movies. So people like to say that, oh, he's one of these guys that does predictive programming. It's like, but he's done a lot of crazy things. Like in so many of his movies, there's not really a common thread or anything. But then movies like this that kind of seem to hit a little different. Like this one has a little more hype behind it, and it's the timing is very precarious, and the way he's doing it, where it's like it's literally an alien movie where when you watch the previews, there's no aliens in it. It's humans, but the aliens are actually channeling through the humans, which is a real thing. Like I've seen it with my own two eyes. Like it's an actual thing. At the Monroe Institute, they have tons, dozens and dozens of audio tapes of their Explorer team, which is their elite team of astral travelers that were literally channeling extraterrestrials through their bodies, and it's all recorded and everything, and getting crazy information. So yeah, we're an instrument for consciousness. That's the whole point of my simulator theory, is that we are an instrument for consciousness. So luckily, we're an instrument for our consciousness most of the time, but it doesn't mean that like a radio, you can't retune the dial and pick up a different station. So I think it's interesting that now the biggest, probably what will go down as the biggest alien movie of all time, might not even ever show an alien in the entire movie. It's literally alien intelligences working through human receivers. And that's way more closer to the truth than people are probably comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah, it really is, and it's important to get those type of ideas out there. Like I know figures like Tucker Carlson and that is talking about angels and demons and kind of framing it back to those type of that type of framework. And
Yeah.
who knows? But on that note, you said the paradigm shifting type of information, slowly releasing it to the public to try and get them used to it. Um, I heard you talk about the 2026 March prophecy by, was it Chris Bledsoe? I
Hmm.
think. And then you got a lot of this new stuff coming out with the pyramids and the Italian gang scanning all the the underneath, and all these mad structures are coming up. So, what do you think's
Yeah.
going on there?
I don't know. I mean, so many prophecies have come and gone and been wrong, so you never want to hitch your wagon to one, because it's guessing, and I think you know me through the law of probability, so you know that I believe that our reality is probabilistic and it's not deterministic. So it means that the future is not has not been created yet. We're creating it in real time through our behaviors and our beliefs and our decisions and that kind of stuff. So prophecies are odd in the sense that they're basically saying something is going to happen. And it's like, well, I don't know if anyone knows what's going to happen, because we still live in this probabilistic reality where the future has not necessarily, like they can see the most probabilistic outcome, but they can't necessarily see the one that absolutely 100% will happen, unless they can just zoom out to such an extent that they can see that there's basically no avoiding these things, or if they're orchestrating it and they already know what they're going to do on that day or something like that. So when it comes to that whole thing, Chris Bledsoe's, the reason I got kind of invested in it is because I took what he said and I was like, okay, he's saying the lady told him that around Easter 2026, there's going to be a new knowledge bestowed upon humanity, and it's going to be centered around the Sphinx in Egypt. I was like, okay, is there any truth to this? So I dug in and I started looking and trying to figure out, okay, what's the significance of that time period? What's the significance of the Sphinx? Where would this new knowledge come from? What does it have to do with anything? And the more I dug, I started finding all of these synchronicities and all these weird things that were pointing to that time period of 2026, and were pointing to this new knowledge. And it wasn't just what Chris said, it's what Edgar Casey said, what Stephen Schwartz uncovered. The Hopi prophecy even actually perfectly aligns, or pretty well aligns with the celestial events that are going to happen on March 20th, 2026, which is 2 weeks before Easter. And according to Chris, the lady told him around Easter. So I was like, okay. So now we have like multiple like perspectives that are suggesting that something could come from that time period and that place on Earth. And then I was like, okay, well, where would the knowledge come from? Like, is it the lady who's going to come and tell us things? or is the knowledge coming from somewhere else? And what I found the most likely thing is that Edgar Casey talks a lot about the Atlantean Archive, this hall of records that's underneath the Sphinx. Actually, halfway between the right paw of the Sphinx and the Nile, there's supposed to be a Atlantean archive of records, and that is full of this information that has to do with the cyclical cataclysms on Earth and these resets, and that it's kind of time locked, and it has to do with our consciousness equilibrium. And once we hit a certain consciousness tipping point, it's basically revealed to us, but it can be revealed sooner if time demands it. So, anyways, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And he had a lot of things that suggested it's going to be, he didn't flat out say it's going to be March 20th, 2026, but like a lot of the things that he says points to this time period. And so I was like, okay, well, now we have something that makes some sense. Like whenever Chris said the lady said, because she didn't say she would say it, she just said a new knowledge should be revealed. Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, said that this new knowledge was going to be revealed and it's going to come from this Atlantean archive. And that to me is very, I don't know, interesting because it's under the Sphinx. The Sphinx is obviously guarding something. This is its role. We know that there's structures underneath the Sphinx and the pyramids. We have no idea who built the pyramids or why. It's a complete mystery. It's a complete anomaly. It's amazing. It's the biggest archaeological project in the history of mankind, and there's no documentation of who did it or why. You have the Egyptians who documented everything. I mean, they made reliefs and they told stories, and they were very proud of their heritage and their history and their pharaohs and all their scientists, and they would put stories on all of their buildings and everything, telling all these stories of how they built the tombs and how they built all these monuments. Not a single word about the pyramids. So it doesn't make any freaking sense at all. And so, anyways, when you put all that together, you're like, okay, there's obviously something about the pyramids and the Sphinx. There's obviously something underneath them. And you have Edgar Casey saying there's this Atlantean library that this new knowledge is going to come out of. And then you have the lady telling Chris that this new knowledge is going to come out of the Sphinx on this day. And then that happens to be the spring equinox. It's March 20th, which is 2 weeks before April, or 2 weeks before Easter. And on that day, which is really crazy, the Sphinx is actually facing due east. And on that day, and only that day, on the spring equinox, the sun comes over the horizon directly in the gaze of the Sphinx. And she said, or her thing to Chris was that when the red star Regulus is in the gaze of the Sphinx, well, Regulus is a blue star, so that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. So I think she said the red star and Regulus, the red star being our sun, is directly in the gaze of the Sphinx on March 20th. And then Regulus actually passes through that quadrant like 4 hours beforehand, which that coincides with the Hopi blue star and red star Kachina, which brings in the age of purification, which is the Great Awakening. Anyways, you put all that together, and my kind of guess is that something's going to happen on March 20th, 2026, which is like a month away, which is nuts. Um, and that if it has to do with anything, it's going to have to do with revealing something underneath the Sphinx, which might be that Atlantean archive. So we have no idea, but it'll be interesting to watch.
Damn, damn, it's so exciting. We truly live in a time where everything is just nearly there. All the information, all the great mysteries might actually be answered, you know. It's an insane time.
It is.
Yeah, yeah. You said you just mentioned there about cataclysms and stuff like this on a bit of a darker note. Just touch on this, okay? Um, I'm hearing a date come up a lot. 2040, 2046. Jason from Archaic says that. Johnny
Hmm.
says 2045, I think. Ben from Space Weather News thinks it's earlier. It's like 2030s or whatever. These cyclical events that happen every 6,000 to 12,000 years. 12,000 is the worst one. 6,000 is the minor ones. Well, kind of. Noah's flood, right? It would have been 6,001. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I hear all different types of opinions on this. Like people would say that there might be some form of like spiritual redemption in terms of like those who are redeemed immorally can be saved, like some type of rapture. I
Yeah.
find that kind of hard to believe. If a tsunami is coming, you know, the good guy down the road is going to be saved, but the bad guy gets hit. Yeah, I don't know. So like, and then other people are like, yeah, get to the highest elevation, or you know, get a good bunker. But what's your thoughts? Are you one to prepare, or are we just gonna, just let fate do its thing?
I mean, we're all gonna die, man. it's you're not trying to like cheat death or anything, but obviously we want to keep this party going as long as possible. Like the goal is to live a long, healthy, prosperous life and have a family and have, interest and contribute to humanity and learn, spread love and light and all that fun stuff. So you don't want to just there's a quote I heard a long time ago stuck with me, and it's only dead fish go with the flow. So if you analyze fish, most fish swim upstream and against the current because if you just go with the flow, you usually go off a waterfall or get stuck somewhere or something, right? So it's one of these things where you don't want to just surrender completely and say, whatever happens, happens. Because, we're here to sort of fight and train and use discernment and intuition and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't just mean you plop yourself down and whatever happens happens. I think that defeats the purpose of coming in here and doing the work that we do here. Now, having said that, you don't want to live in fear. You don't want to, because so many things come and go and nothing happens, right? So every time someone makes a prophecy or says the world's going to end, I mean, I'm 46, and just my lifetime, there's been like 5 or 6 different times where I was told the world was going to end, right? And
Yeah.
it didn't end.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be one of these people panicking and running for the hills every time someone says the world's going to end. But then you also just look at history, and there's obviously been very significant cataclysms and these giant resets that have happened. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, there's places that are above water now that used to be below water. There's places that are below water that used to be above water. So, I mean, it's ignorant to say bad things like that never happen. The Earth changes, it shifts, it flips, it does all sorts of stuff. And a lot of geologists think we're overdue for some sort of a flip, a magnetic pole reversal. So, but to be able to like pinpoint a date is hard. Um, the weird thing is that there's a lot of people saying the 2040s. So I was on Jason Bashir's show last year. I like him a lot. He's done an amazing amount of work. But the thing is, most of his work is done by looking at the past. And he looks at the past and he says, because these things happened in the past, they're going to happen in the future. And it's like, well,
Chronologist, right?
chronologist, exactly. And he has a ton of data and he's very smart and very meticulous with his data, but I still I still always go back to the future is probabilistic. And just because something happened in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen in the future. Plus, some of these resets I think are more frequency based, meaning that like if we're in bad shape collectively, it gives Gaia, Earth, a opportunity to clean the slate if we're out of whack, And so I think a lot of it has to do with, do we deserve to be reset or not? You know what I mean? And I know that sounds very like judgmental, but you got to think about our body does the same thing. Like our human body allows in certain bacteria and viruses and invaders and stuff. And it usually just is cool with it. It's like, okay, we have a certain amount of invaders in our body. Our immune system fights them. No big deal. We don't need to panic. But when it hits a threshold, a tipping point, it does all of these inflammatory responses and it can do a total detox and you go and you get a fever and you go into the cold sweats and you're puking and you're doing all this stuff. That's your body saying, hey, we got enough, we have too many invaders in our body, they all got to get out. And it does all these violent crazy things to get them out. Why would Earth be any different? So I see Earth as like this intelligent life form, this conscious being that is like, okay, I'm gonna let you guys do your stuff. You're making a big mess up there, but it's all good until you get to a certain threshold. And if you do, I have the ability to wipe you guys out. This is all Earth based. And so I look at it as long as we're good stewards of the Earth, we're taking care of the Earth and respecting the Earth and each other and all this kind of stuff, there's no need to wipe everybody out. And in fact, there's never been a time where everyone was wiped out, or we wouldn't be here talking, right? Humanity has made it through all these things, which means it's never a complete wipeout or reset. It's not just one dude on a boat that got saved. I mean, it's more localized, it seems. It's never just everybody's gone. And there seems to be these helpers that kind of pop up and help reset humanity. Like there's so many stories from ancient civilizations that people came from the sky or the water and helped reset civilization. They have those little handbags and they teach people
Okay.
agriculture and government and finance and they get them on their way. So there are survivors. There are these other beings, what do they call them, Nordics or Anunnaki or angels or whatever, that seem to know it's coming. They prepare, and when it's over, they help get people back on their feet. So there's like a system in place,
Hmm.
as weird as that sounds. So I just think the best thing people can do is don't fear. I mean, I live in Florida, right by the coast. I mean, I could throw a rock and hit the ocean.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely in the worst place possible for any sort of a
Well,
cataclysm.
I'm on a little island, Ireland.
Okay.
So,
But I'm not panicking, I'm not running for the hills. I look at it like live your life, have fun, but also use your intuition. Like if you feel, not because you watched a video and the guy said something scary, but if you
yeah.
feel like you're drawn to a certain place or you should move or you should do something, go with your intuition, go with your gut, but do it because you feel that way. Don't do it because you you're scared. Um, that's my intuition. I'm just going to listen to my intuition as we get closer to 2040 and those types of things. If I get a feeling, if the water seems to be rising or if the earth is changing or anything like that, I'll change with it.
Okay.
But right now, I think the best thing we can do is just try to like try to not force the earth to make any rash decisions.
You know what? I love that. That's a great outlook. You're really important in my journey, honestly. I gotta say, like it has been a like yeah, like look, we talked about Rajani's outlook a couple of times, and I kind of was you're probably able to tell by the questions I was asking, the darker stuff, that yeah, my mind has been kind of fixated on the darker outcomes, and yeah, you have a great perspective on that.
I mean, Carl Jung talked a lot about shadow and dark stuff, and he would say that like only fools like run from their shadow. It's all about like incorporating the shadow. Like you're not supposed to be afraid of it or hide it or suppress it. That makes it worse. You're supposed to embrace it and just know that there is like this is a dualistic world. There is a dark side and a light side. There's a negative and a positive, and that you actually have to have that. It's like a battery. Like a battery can't work if it doesn't have a negative and a positive. So like
Yep.
you have to have those two forces playing against each other. You just have to keep them in balance,
Well, hey,
right?
that's what this is about. So
Yeah.
my own journey into spirituality was that integrating my shadow, which was a lot to do with sexual suppression and stuff like that. So the Eros side of life, and so that's why I have that Eros on logos because
Mhm.
it I needed to stamp some order and some reason on this goddamn thing, you know. So it was my own personal little journey, and that's what led me into this world of spirituality. So like again, another reason why I was kind of hesitating on on a lot of this because like I'm like, is this too pretentious? You know what I mean? Like, nobody will understand that, and it's not even a real word. Georgiani's gonna call me up. I'm not smart enough.
Well, I mean, hey, this the cool thing about like podcasts and stuff is that you're supposed to make it about you. It's supposed to be flavored by you and have your personality and stuff because that's I mean, it's like there's a million podcasts out there. So you don't want to just make a generic one just like everyone else's. It's like you'll get lost in the sea of shit. It's like you have to make it individualized. You have to make it because you might think like, well, if I make it about me, no one's going to watch. It's like, well, the truth is there's a lot of people like you out there. You know what I mean? So the whole point is you're just going to attract people that are like you, people that get it, people that are like, oh, I like the way this guy's talking. I like what he's talking about. So you're not trying to make something for everyone. That's impossible. You make it for yourself, knowing that there's other people like you out there, and you'll start to attract those like minds.
Mm,
So
well said.
I look at it like I don't care if I get a 10 views on a video or 10,000 views on a video. It's like the right people are going to watch it, right?
Mm,
So imagine if you were in a room, like people say, "Oh, I did a video and I only got 100 views." It's like, dude, imagine if you were in a room with 100 people and you had to give a talk to 100 people. That's a big fucking audience. You know what I mean? Like
mm,
talking to 100 people is a big deal. So we just live in this world where everybody wants millions of views and stuff, and it's like you have to think it's like quality over quantity. It's like,
yeah.
if you have 100 people that want to hear you talk, that's a big deal. You know, like that's a lot of people. You can make a big difference in the world hitting 100 people at a time. You don't have to hit millions. Like we see all these numbers people do, and it's like these unrealistic expectations.
Hey, I understand completely, and I fully agree. Like, it's not even my field of view to be doing any big numbers like that. It's more so overcoming the cringe of, just fleshing out that early stage of the draft, so to speak, on all your
Yeah.
creative projects. So it's just overcoming the cringe. On a lighter note, I know I just want to be respectful of your time. It's coming up, but I just wanted to touch on something that's coming up soon. You mentioned the Psy Games in Virginia. So I'm kind of new to this. I watched a bit of Danny Jones' podcast. I think her name was Dahlia. Is that her name?
Yeah.
Um, And then I watched some clips of last year's Psy Games, and
Mhm.
wow, like she was just so fast, kind of like separating these colors, where she was fully blindfolded, couldn't see anything, and then the task was to put these little colorful discs on these rods, and she had to sort
Yeah.
them appropriately, and the whole crowd was going nuts. Were you at that one? Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah. I
were.
was the commentator. So yeah, it was
Oh,
crazy.
were you? Oh,
Yeah, I was
God,
doing like
wow.
play by play. Yeah.
Awesome. And you're commentating again this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be speaking at it too and doing some other things. Yeah, it's a great event. Great event. And that was wild to watch.
Yeah, God, that's one
Because
of the
like you're
shows.
doing, it's essentially like children's tasks. It seems so like elementary. It's like, oh, you're putting colored blocks on a colored thing, but you're doing it without you have no sight, right? So you're seeing without your eyes, essentially. And I mean these we wear these special, they're called mindfolds, but it's a mindfold blindfold that's made to, I mean, trust me, you can buy them on Amazon. You put it on, you can't see anything. Like people will say, "Oh, if you put your head back like you can," dude, you see a tiny pin light. Maybe if you crane your head all the way back 90 degrees, you can't see anything. You can't read anything. And then on top of that, we put blindfolds on first, and then the mindfold over it, and you can't see anything. I mean, it's pitch freaking black. And everyone else was just, they were doing good, over 50%. But then she all of a sudden is just smoking people out of the water. I mean, just nailing bam, 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 and everyone's like, "What the heck?" But then, so her daughter is actually one of the kids in the telepathy tapes, and like they're incredibly psychic. Like they're just, her daughter went up there and did some stuff that people could not. And we had a panel of judges, Jeffrey Mishlove, like I forget all the other people. There are so many like military grade remote viewers and scientists and stuff on this
Wow.
panel, like
Okay.
top people, Paul Smith, all sorts of people, and they were blown. I mean, they could not explain what this girl was doing. So it's like reading minds, like just straight up telepathy. Like you write, like I write something on a piece of paper. She tells me exactly what it is. They did this thing where she's a speller, where she can't speak. She has to spell on this board. She's a nonverbal autistic. So they pulled this guy out of the audience, brought him up, said, "Okay, ask a question, but you're going to write the question on a piece of paper. Only you can see it." He's standing over there. He's got a piece of paper. They're like, "Write a question. It has to be a question that like a kid could answer." So he wrote, "What color is the sun?" Right? On this little piece of paper. And then he put that piece of paper in his pocket. And he's like 20 feet away from her. She's in a chair and she's facing the other direction. And she's like super autistic. She's just kind of like this, like whatever, and blindfolded and everything. And then the mom puts the board and says, "Answer the question." And she writes yellow, just without like skipping a beat. And the
Wow.
guy's like, just pulled him out of the audience. I mean, like, right, like everyone was just floored, but she does it so nonchalantly and casually. It's almost like anticlimactic
Oh,
because it's
right.
like, because she's just so smooth with it that you're like, wait, what? What? Hold on, what? Like, and then you are just like, how do you explain this?
Mm, oh my God.
Yeah,
And,
it was wild.
and is there any workshop for you to learn any of these things at that event, or
Mhm.
there
Yeah,
is?
so it's like, so there's the one day where it's the competitions. There's another day where there's like workshops and some immersive type things, and also a lot of speakers like talking about it, giving like their tips and secrets and telling, just explaining things. And then there's different activities and stuff we do too. So we even had like a sky watching thing with Chris Bledsoe and that kind of stuff. But it's a really cool event. It's done in a way that's very, respectful and credible to the psychic community and stuff. They're not trying to exploit anything. They're very, like, all the people are like academics, top of their professions and everything, taking it very, very seriously. Hakeem Isler, who started all this, I went to the Monroe Institute with him, and he's just one of the most impressive people you'll ever meet in your life. Multiple black belt in different martial arts. I mean, yoga master. He was the only person to ever be on that show, Naked and Afraid, twice. He's a survivalist. He's just an all-around incredible person and badass. And so, anyways, he put it on because he was like, well, I want these young people, especially, to like, how we grew up and we're like, when I grow up, I want to be a professional football player or a professional singer or whatever. These kids that have these incredible psychic abilities, they don't really have anything to aspire to. It's like, okay, what do you do with these gifts? Like, what do you do with this? Like when you're young and you have natural skills, like if you're really good at soccer, then your family and friends are like, oh, we'll play soccer. These kids have these natural abilities, and they're like, don't tell anyone. It's like, well, that's messed up, right? That they should be proud of this. So the Psy Games was created to make these, especially young people, but older people too, um, give them a place to be proud of their skills and to practice and to hone them and to connect with other people with similar abilities. And do it in like a competitive environment, but also a very like nurturing and supportive environment. And that's exactly what it is. And it's a really cool event.
Amazing. Oh, it's so like this should be front page news. Like,
Yeah.
everybody worried about the Super Bowl or football or whatever it might be. And I'm like, do you know there's a Psy games, like psychokinesis, psychic games
Mhm.
going on in Virginia right now? And like, yeah,
Let's come into
it's
the UK next year. So it's growing. Yeah.
okay.
And
I have
and
to look into this more. I'm gonna go to that then. It's only across the pond for me.
Yeah, I don't think there's any like official, so don't hold me to any dates or places or anything, but it's definitely like it's going international, let's say that. And there's going to be different workshops and different Psy events. I think the Psy Games UK one is official, but so that will happen. I just don't know exactly when and where, but it's definitely. I mean, we've only done one so far. There's only been one, but it's growing fast, and the excitement around it, the interest from all over the world has been overwhelming. I talked to Hakeem just the other day, and he's like, "It's crazy. Like people are. It's the right place and the right time for this. You know, like Jeffrey Mishlove told him that he wanted to do something similar to this back in the '80s, and it was just crickets. And he's like, so Jeffrey was one of his consultants, and Jeffrey told him, do it and do it now. This is the right time and right place. Like there is this awakening happening, and people are more comfortable with these things. The taboo and everything is dropping, and the telepathy tapes was the number one podcast in the entire world, and it's all about nonverbal autistic telepathic children, right? It's a number it beat Joe Rogan, so it's like, come on, like people are ready. So
Yeah, everything's happening at the same time, right?
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Look, man, I love this. I had questions I was going to ask that had more topical to do with my channel, but I kind of just got lost in the funness of all the varying topics that you cover. I had to. This one was for me, okay? But
Yeah, man.
but yeah, no, I really really enjoyed this, dude. It was great having you on, and thanks so much. I really really loved it. Hopefully we'll do it again sometime in the future, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it easy.
All right, bye, guys.